Let's talk about a very important aspect of game mechanics that most projects do and update throughout the whole production cycle, and it's what makes mechanics actually great: game feel. Game feel is known as this intangible sensation that makes interaction really satisfying. A lot of people use as examples games where you play as a particular single character. Like in Mario titles, it just feels fun to control him and experiment with his moveset even without any challenge in sight. But the game feel is not just about that, it's about everything. From the way the camera can shake in Luftrausers, to how cards in Hearthstone swing along as you move them, to the popping out tongue in Full Throttle's control interface, to just pressing a menu button. It's about getting a satisfying feeling from the moment-to-moment interaction with the game. There is a story, maybe even a fable, since I can't seem to find anyone who can confirm this particular series of events actually happened, but nonetheless the message holds true. The story goes that playtesters of Sands of Time would find the prince to be very unresponsive, sluggish to control, and not enjoyable to play as. To fix that, the developers did not actually change anything in terms of how the prince behaved mechanically, but they tweaked his animations, the sounds he made, added some visual effects on particular moves, and after that the players felt that the prince controlled just great. This is why game feel can be so important. Even when mechanically everything is fine, you need those extra sensations for players to actually appreciate and enjoy them. So this is all great, but where does game feel come from conceptually? If you go back to the life of a mechanic, game feel is what leads from information processed as a result of inputs to satisfaction. Now, there are actually many aspects that go into creating game feel, from mechanical to aesthetical to cognitive and others. That said, there is a way to summarize all that into a rule of thumb, so to speak. As we discussed, players need time to actually understand what is going on screen. And the faster we can process the result of our inputs, the more satisfying it feels. And that process can be sped up with all these things like extra effects, sounds, movements, and whatnot. If we take the Hearthstone example, moving the card around the screen already doesn't take a lot of time to process. But adding that sway not only is aesthetically pleasing and looks cool, but it gives us more signals that we're moving it, and at what speed we're doing so, therefore making us process that input even faster. However, we have to avoid just throwing in everything we can, as then we'll actually get information overload, which will not feel good at all. But this also doesn't mean that good game feel is achieved only through something short and snappy, as something lengthy can also be satisfying, as long as in the beginning of that sequence we provide enough information for players to process the state of the game fast. So you can see why it can be difficult to talk about game feel. Even when trying to argument how it works, ultimately it's still all about feelings and sensations. But besides the rule of thumb we mentioned above, there are many different guidelines and tips how it can be achieved, which we'll start discussing with the next chapter. But before that, I would like you to analyze your favorite games and write down what you think adds to game feel there. And as always, feel free to share your work and I will be happy to provide feedback.